Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming today. We're going to dig into this topic of retail's next 3 years. So make the case for building a roadmap around tremendous amount of innovation that's taking place. And I'm thrilled to have Nick from Microsoft. My name is Peter Evans. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at McFadyen Digital. We help companies with their strategy and implementations of marketplaces. So this is very relevant to our, how we're seeing the world. And so we're going to walk through some of those ideas. Nick, do you want to take a minute and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Peter. Nick Katsivelos. I'm the industry strategist for media and entertainment at Microsoft. So working with our largest media customers, but also the agencies, and the very close crossover between retail and media these days. So there's our retail team is here as well, and we all work together pretty often. So looking forward to it. There's so much going on right now that's technology driven, and ways to interact with people. I think there's some great stuff coming.
So do you want to just describe a little bit about, you sit in a lab, and I know you work with university here in New York.
Yeah, so I work with New York University's Integrated Digital Media program. It's out of NYU Engineering, and we're doing all kinds of next generation interfaces, so virtual production and all that volumetric capture and some really great stuff there, and really working on how to better communicate and help people accomplish what they're trying to get done.
Great. So we have some slides we wanted to share, and again, focus on this strategic planning component of thinking not just of campaigns, but a longer term strategy in this space. And there's a lot going on, and so we wanted to hit some of those elements. So we're going to talk about strategic planning, what might go into developing a Web3 roadmap, and not thinking of Web3. I mean, there's some folks that have a very narrow definition. We're going to look at this space broadly and pragmatically, right? It's looking at what's out there that's interesting, that can be useful. And then the future of the digital shelf, right? Lots of things interesting that are changing in that space. So when we look out at the future and think about the next 3 years and thinking about developing a plan to 2025, there's just a lot of options out there for retailers. Obviously, returns and thinking about that space. Yeah. So you want to get rid of that. So that's one option to think about. And there's a lot of strategy that goes into how do you migrate people to paying for returns. Launching re-commerce, right? Sustainability is a big issue. How do you deal with taking back product or getting customers to use less and things of that nature? Vertical marketplaces are emerging, right? So that's an interesting space. Optimizing the customer experience, and then what would a Web3 plan look like? And there's lots of elements inside there with Metaverse and NFTs and DApps and things of that nature. So this raises a number of key questions, which is what are the trends out there? Are you looking at the full array? How much should retailers invest in Web3? Should it be a little piece, or does it make sense to invest more heavily? And then where to invest? And then what capabilities do you need to be able to execute on that? And then what risks need to be managed? So we've done some at this time of year, lots of publications put out trends analysis, collected 35 of these, and each of these dots here represents one trend. And what's interesting, and on average, these trend articles or reports typically have about 8 trends. You can see Andreessen Horowitz A16Z, which is the top one, had 25. They basically went around their partners and asked them, what do you see happening? So in this list, we've got Deloitte and Forrester, Accenture, and things of that nature. And when you cluster them, you can see that retail and e-commerce, it gets a lot of trends, tech trends, obviously, Macro trends, there's a lot going on in the global economy with the war in Ukraine and trade tensions with China, so there's folks that focus on that part. But then there's B2B marketing, digital marketing, mobile apps, lots of things. So I'm not going to dig into all of it today, but highly recommend just getting the big picture overview, because these are big organizations with a lot of smart people in them, and understanding collectively what are they seeing in the future. So doing trends analysis, I think, is very valuable. The other is to see what other brands are doing, and not just one. You can read lots of stories about what each brand is doing. Any idea here what percentage of the best global brands from Interbrand, how many of them are doing NFT projects? Turns out 43%. So pretty big percentage. And when you look at primary sales of those, it's over 100 million. That's what they charge. But a lot of these are actually free. So the monetary value doesn't really tell you the full value potential of this. And then obviously when you get an NFT, you can resell it. So those that have resold their NFT have generated $1.5 billion. So the idea that the brands are collecting all this revenue is a misnomer. I don't know, do you have any observations in this space as to what you're seeing with respect to what brands are doing?
I think one thing that's been pretty interesting is the level of long-term investment in the programs. That some people are out there dabbling. As I'm all for experimenting and actually having your hand, in something that you want to consider. But how much follow through are they expecting? It's different, as you were saying, like campaigns. It's one and done, and that one-day sale is over, and you move forward. Here, you've put something out in the world that's supposed to hold value indefinitely, so your program needs to be ready for it. I think we saw something similar to that when mobile came out, and every brand rushed to make an app, and then they realized that, oh, this thing has a life, and we have to stick with it for a while and do upgrades, and there's a lot more to it in the operational sense.
Right. Just in terms of projects that I would point out, obviously Nike with Artifact is an interesting project to follow. They do have a program, and their NFT and their community engagement builds, right, which is important. Another one is VW. They've got a bunch of brands, and they're doing a bunch of different NFT programs through their various brands. So Porsche, which is owned by VW, is a project to watch. The other is to actually do some research in this space and dig into them and really understand what's happening. So this is a Sankey diagram of 50 collections done by 15 major brands. This just shows the difference in how, kind of the split between luxury and mass market, which is interesting. And then there are different ways to get the NFTs out into the market. You can do drops. You can do ticketing, and you can do auctions. The auctions actually are very high value. So Lamborghini, the one on the very top, is actually a $1.6 million NFT project, but it was associated with the vehicles. So the NFT represented your access to win the actual vehicle. So it's not just the digital asset, there can be physical assets associated with them as well. So recommendation here is really study the space and understand, who's doing great projects, and some projects are not so great and why, so that you can decide, where and how to innovate smartly. So we're seeing, a big transition. Over the next 3 years, we're going to see a continuous move from having your traditional stores with your physical products where people can go see the item, understand what the prices are and things of that nature, moving online to basically putting your catalogs online. So that's well established. Lots of companies are doing this. But really what's exciting and interesting is the move to Web3, which is how do you open this up so you're not just looking at a catalog, you can actually build stores in the metaverse. So Nike built a store in Roblox. In the first 4 months, they had 6.7 million people visit that store. And we're seeing also that the digital representation is now being mirrored in the physical. So Nike, at their flagship store here in New York, had a representation in the gaming that was taking place in the metaverse. So you want this interactive engagement, and you drive your people who visit your physical store to your digital assets, and the people visiting your digital assets, you want them to come to your digital stores.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that bridging physical and digital is critical. And if you think about it in a network effect sort of way, if you've got all these little activations happening all over in your retail shops, to have them unify into one place in the digital domain, where suddenly you're taking those, say, 50 different opportunities that are happening all over and bringing them all together in one place for one larger community, it's really powerful, because you're finding people self-selecting at a local level, and then finding like minds, at a global scale, the opportunities for brands and for the retailers at a transactional level are really pretty amazing.
Yep. And you can take it a step further and have avatars and NFTs associated with the community that you build. So this is Nike's Artifact. This is a combination of a physical hoodie, but the people that can get access to it are the people that had the NFTs and were part of the community. And they've inserted this near field communication, or what they call NFC technology, that gets activated when they use these AR filters, which then are put all over social media. So this was just activated recently, and just a huge number of the owners, and they had to pay a lot of money to get in the club, right, to be able to get this, but it's pretty cool and allows you to have a digital representation. So the people that have gotten the actual physical hoodie will show the AR filter, which is activated because they have an NFT. So these things weave together and aren't separate in good projects, right? The Metaverse links into your NFT campaign, which links into these new ways of activating AR technology, which is pretty interesting. So you can imagine this happening with retail clothing, but imagine, the automobile industry might want to do this, and you put wings on your car. I mean, there's just all sorts of really, really interesting things you can do. And this is what they call forging. So they get the NFT, they get the physical item, and then they forge it. And then let me show you what this means.
And forge, you mean like,
yeah,
not like, hey, here's a fake.
Yeah, so this is a representation of the various elements that can go into the design of an NFT token. And when you look at all the different possibilities, we calculate that there are over 7,000, okay? And now let me show you the Nike, what it looks like. So this are the elements that they chose to deliver that particular NFT. And I will just go to the third column there, which are the functional parameters. You can see that some NFTs allow you to burn them, right? You use it and then it's burned and you can't use them again. You can have dynamic NFTs that change their state, and then you can have fixed. Most NFTs that you've heard about are fixed. What's interesting and innovative about what Nike is doing is that they've created this forgeable, and then when you get down to the token standard, they're actually using two types of tokens. The first one you receive is in what they call an ERC 1155, and when you forge it, it's transformed into an ERC 721. So you can get pretty sophisticated in your token design. So a lot of companies just don't know what's happening, and they give third parties basically to design all of this stuff. I think it makes a lot of sense to understand the full range of things you can do with these NFTs, and tell the third party that will do the minting and the campaign design exactly what you want, so that they're not leaving things out. Because the worst thing you want is a campaign to run with an NFT and say, well, we thought it did this. Well, if you haven't built it into the design of the token, doing it after the fact is very painful, if not impossible.
I think that also brings up a key point with all of these new technologies and all these immersive things where you're trying to have an always-on relationship with a customer, is that you can't do it alone. You've got to have partners. You've got to build an ecosystem of your own around these things. And so you're probably not going to do the whole technical stack of forging and all of that. You're probably going to work with a partner. And finding the right partners is the key thing. Who's the partner that really wants to understand your business, that really wants to get in and understands how to drive value for you? Because it's not going to be the same for a Nike as it is going to be for an H&M, as it's going to be for a Woolworths in Australia.
Right.
So partnership, finding the right partners, and getting down to the why and of what you're trying to accomplish.
In fact, we're seeing now the rise of NFT or Web3 managed service companies.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah,
and so there's actually quite a number of them out there. Some of them do great work, some of them not so great. So really understanding that landscape and what their capabilities are is key to being successful in this space.
I think also going back to that slide is there's 7,000 permutations currently.
Yes.
Right, and there's
Yes.
more stuff every day, so it does not get simpler as time goes on.
Exactly. So the other thing that's really interesting is it's not just the brands, but the companies that support kind of the platforms or the marketplaces are now getting into this space and developing tools that can then be used by the brands. So Shopify is a good example. They now provide digital wallet capabilities. They also allow for NFT token gating. So now smaller merchants that wouldn't have this capability can go to Shopify, pull down these capabilities and use them to drive their engagement with their customers. And I think more and more we're going to see the big platforms out there that are enabling e-commerce adopt these. So understanding, joining these platforms, participating on these platforms, what do they have available, what are they planning to have available is, I think, a critical business decision.
Yeah, absolutely, and it gives a great way to put a toe in the water and begin to understand the space. If you think about what happened with just the web, right? Okay, building a website at first was hard, and then there were platforms like, say, Squarespace or whatever, and now they will give you one-click e-commerce capabilities. I mean, it used to be a real pain in the neck to set up e-commerce, and now you're done. So I think these platforms are going to continue to offer the value that the shop owners need. So.
Yep. And so I learned about this idea of live ops, and we're going to take a few minutes to describe this shift from DevOps, where you have developers design something, to this live ops. I actually built this slide using ChatGPT. So I just typed in, I said, hey, what's the definition of live ops? Boom. Within a minute it had the answer. And then I said, where did the term originate? It gave me a nice history. And then I said, what are the use cases in the retail space? And it gave me a nice list of 4 or 5 options. But we have an expert here, so rather than using ChatGPT, Nick, do you want to explain a little bit about what you're seeing in this space, and why do you think this is an interesting methodology for retailers to begin to understand, and how this world can enhance their objectives,
Yep.
which is customer engagement?
Sure, and it starts with customer engagement, and what we're seeing in the market writ large is people who are engaged and have a community-type relationship tend to spend a lot more with that relationship. And if we look around at who's building the largest communities right now, it's all happening in the gaming world. So a Minecraft, a Fortnite, Roblox, you name it, World of Warcraft, have brought together millions of people who interact daily. And the things that keep them coming back are a sense of mission or purpose and a binding in a community. And managing at scale, right? So millions and millions of people, how do you keep them engaged? How do you set things up for them is very difficult. These particular platforms are using this methodology and the technology behind it called live ops. And the idea is, previously, if you wanted to define a customer journey, you would have a bunch of people sit in a room and a whiteboard, and you'd block it all out, and then it would take months to get everything pulled together, and you'd go and you'd do it, and it'd be one shot, and it would either work or not.
And it's one journey, right?
Right, it's one journey. Or maybe you have a few, right, with the happy path, and you focus on the happy path. But instead, with live ops, you're there and you have control of all the levers of engagement. So if you see that in one geo, people are really engaged with topic X, you can suddenly string together a challenge or a mission on topic X for people to engage and level up and have their engagement scored. And with that, you're moving with them. And this is stuff that's happening real time. So the systems are set up and you can just start creating new challenges on the fly. One person in 10 minutes can set something up that then impacts, say, 300,000 people. Or you can get hyper granular if you find that one, super customer who's out there doing something. You can target that person and equip them with more tools to go out and be a better brand ambassador or something like that. And it is the agility, and that's why they call it live ops. Like DevOps was meant to be very agile for software development. This is the very agile way to build community and the structures that keep that community going.
Interesting. So can you explain a little bit about what PlayFab is, what its architecture is, its various components, and then how it might apply in the retail space?
Sure. So the notion of gamification has been around for a long time. And one of the first things I hear from brands when we talk about live ops and that it comes from gaming is they're like, but we're not a game. We don't do gaming. We're not about, but at the end of the day, you are, right? You have something and you want people to behave in a certain way, and there are levers to pull to make people do certain things. So it's giving you that control. If you think about trying to build a system that would have 2 billion people registered in it, that can track every interaction they have on your platform and individually goal them, it's very difficult to build. But why would you build it again, right? There are the people who have built these, PlayFab is one, that are out there at scale operating, and frankly, it's available, free.
So retailers can tap into this community?
Anyone can tap into it at any level and really pay on a basis of how much volume business you're doing. So easy to get in, to set up. You can start a program working with your existing digital assets. If you have a mobile app and a website, you can begin to put these services in there. So if you wanted to have questionnaires, that's at the very low level of things you could do. Everything from there to watch parties where you can have a whole bunch of people get together and watch a game or watch an infomercial, whatever it is. It's all pre-baked for you, and it's software as a service. And in the same way that Shopify is offering, amazing commerce components, these are the community components that you stitch together, and they'll work together with anything. It's an open architecture.
So are there agencies that specialize in this area that could help brands, or is this so new that that kind of ecosystem of third parties hasn't emerged yet?
It's definitely emerging. So there are a few partners we work with. One of them is Allison Smith. They're out of Canada. And they're a former gaming company. I mean, that's really where their roots are. So they were using these technologies for game developers. So they have the full understanding of how the platform works and what the power is. But they were pretty with a lot of foresight, I think, pivoting to really say, like, this has applications across everything. And how do we bring this to business and help it drive business value?
Gotcha. And it can work across the continuum of like virtual stores all the way to more
physical
of
stores.
A metaverse environment?
Anything, any interaction you have that's digitally mediated. So I buy something and that transaction goes through, that's something that goes into the system. I walk into the store and I identify myself, that goes into the system. I log in online, that goes into the system. And all of those behaviors are strung together, and you get a persona buildup of someone's, account, understanding what they're all about, that can be truly omni-channel. And I think that's, if I look around, I'm sure there are a million people here who've been trying on the omni-channel journey for a long time, and it's very difficult. And I'm not going to say this makes it all simple, but it is a very effective way to get to a much more dynamic kind of relationship with your customers.
And usually it's the marketing team that takes this over, or is it the product team, like who, or the merchandise, like?
Yeah, it depends on the type of firm. But marketing is probably where it sits. I mean, they're the people who are thinking most about customer relations and whatnot. I mean, certainly, other aspects of the business would want to weigh in, because it's effectively governing your entire brand behavior. So brand has to be in there, just as brand needs to be in on NFTs too. But I think one of the most interesting things is that you can get in and test and learn very quickly and with a really light touch and understand the power. So rather than take it from me, I encourage people to just go and try it out.
So you mentioned customer journey. Does this replace customer journey, or does it become another frame to rethink the customer journey?
I think,
or is that just gone now?
No. I think customer journey is 100% there, but what it lets you do is that sort of larger scale, what you're already doing, kind of customer journey stays, and then this is the real sort of implementation level of the nuts and bolts of how you make that journey work. So, you're going to need different levels of granularity as you're looking at the problem. As you pull back out, it's customer journey just like we've always known it. And what we're looking for, and you can talk to some of the folks at Microsoft here, is also, how do we take a system like PlayFab and integrate it with your customer intelligence platform? And the opportunities there are huge.
Yep, great. Well, to kind of pull things back together and tie a ribbon around it, going back to this roadmap, right, for the future, is we just wanted to give you kind of a sense of some of the things that are out there. There's obviously a lot more. So it's, again, assessing those trends, understanding what they are, developing a vision and set of goals, and then communicating that. So what often happens is a small team does all this research, they get it, but you still have to share that both internally to get buy-in, but then also with your customers and partners. And it's a lot of work to do that. And a lot of this is new, so it's introducing new concepts, new technologies, new ways of thinking about the space. And then understanding what are the capabilities you need to be actually to execute. We mentioned the fact that in the Web3 space, there are now these Web3 service providers that are emerging. I would imagine in the live ops space, this is a new capability to think about what kind of people, what kind of backgrounds do they need?
Absolutely.
And then
I deal a lot with the agencies, and the agencies are all very interested right now.
Right. And then you got to experiment, right?
Yep.
You can't just watch. You got to actually go and drive.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, is any roadmap you've got. I think we've all learned, especially this year, I think the amount of tech innovation with ChatGPT and DALL-E and all of that is incredible, is that you've got to be in it. And that roadmap of yours needs to be able to change, just like the customer journey. You can't just assume the happy path, right? You've got to be in there and readjusting.
Right, and I think what I showed earlier, that 47% of the brands, or 43, I forget what number I used, 43% of the brands have done some kind of NFT project, which is, an illustration, and the fact they did it so fast.
Yep.
I mean, that was what caught my attention. It didn't take them 2 or 3 years to start doing this. They did it pretty quickly, because I think they understood. And some have been better than others, of course. And then obviously track this stuff, monitor it, and then course correct as new things, as you learn. So I'm not a big fan of this idea of fail fast. I'm a big fan of pivoting fast, right? And so you always learn as you do these experimentations. Any last words? We're just up to time.
The only thing I can say is, you and your team should get out there and play with some of these new technologies that are out there. I mean, ChatGPT is just one
phenomenal.
of them.
Yes.
And it will open up, the possibilities. A lot of stuff that people have been talking about and imagining for decades is suddenly upon us.
Well, and it's not just on the tech side. You have DALL-E, which is
right.
on the visual side. So there's just
Yes,
a whole array of
on
these
creativity and bringing amazing tools to people. Things are going to be very different in a year.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
today.
Always a
Really
pleasure.
appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.